Welcome to Monday's Momentum at Math Science History. I'm Gabrielle Burchak, your host. And this week is Earth Day week. And I keep thinking about something bigger than the environment. I keep thinking about communication. And I did a podcast on this years ago. And one of the most remarkable lessons that I learned from that podcast and from the very first Earth Day in 1970 is not only what people fought for, but how they built it. The movement began when Democratic Senator Gaylord Nelson reached across the aisle and invited Republican Congressman Pete McCloskey to help lead it. And this really matters. From the very beginning, Earth Day was built on the idea that progress requires conversation, especially with people who do not already agree with us. And honestly, this may be one of the most relevant lessons for us right now. Because whether it's politics, work, family, or even creative partnerships, momentum often begins with communication. Not perfect agreement, but communication. Here's what's cool about Earth Day. The very first one brought an estimated 20 million Americans into the streets, parks, and campuses across the country. That was roughly 1 in 10 Americans at that time. That kind of scale doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when people find a common ground. And here is where the data gets fascinating. Research consistently shows that communication across disagreement can reduce hostility and increase empathy. According to the American Psychological Association, one of the most effective ways to reduce polarization is to bring people together in safe, structured dialogue groups, where the goal is listening rather than winning. This is important because we often assume that disagreement means disconnection. But the research suggests something completely different. When people feel heard, the temperature of conflict begins to lower. In another study, Stanford researchers found that empathy and understanding the values that the other side holds dear are critical to easing political polarization. Notice what that means. The bridge is not agreement. Rather, the bridge is understanding values, and this is a huge distinction. Sometimes in math, you can't solve for the unknown using only one equation. Instead of one equation, imagine we have two. The first says x plus y equals 10. The second equation says x minus y equals 2. On their own, each one gives us information, but not the full answer. And whatever they equal are completely different. One tells us the total and the other tells us the difference. Neither one by itself reveals the exact values. But when we hold both perspectives together, something really beautiful happens. We can solve for the unknown. If we add the two equations together, the positive y and the negative y cancel each other out. And now we have 2x equals 12, and we divide 12 by 2, x equals 6. There's the answer for x. And if x is 6, then y is 4. Now think about what that means in human terms. Sorry to throw in the math, didn't want to overwhelm you with that one. But let's talk about human terms. One person brings one perspective, and another person brings a different perspective. Neither perspective alone gives the full picture. However, when both are heard together, the solution begins to emerge. This isn't identical thinking. This is common ground, and this is an intersection, and this is where understanding lives. Human communication often works the same way, using two perspectives in one intersection. And this is also where momentum lives. Momentum is not proving someone wrong. Momentum in math and in life is where the lines meet. So I'm going to swap the variables x and y for something more concrete. One person says, I care about security. The other one says, I care about freedom. At first, those both sound opposed. But when we put both concerns on the table, we often find a shared solution that protects them both. And here's the part I really sat with and thought hard about, and I think you might find this interesting too. Recent large-scale research from the University of Rochester found that one of the most effective ways to reduce partisan hostility is to highlight common ground and humanize people with different political views. That means the data supports something beautifully simple. People become less hostile when they are reminded that the other side is still human. I love this because it tells us that communication is not weakness, but rather it is evidence-based strategy and it works. And okay, I'm going to be honest, not every study finds huge effects. UC Berkeley research has shown that very brief conversations alone may not dramatically reduce deep political divisions, especially on highly charged issues. It's a fantastic article, and I'm going to post it on my website at Math Science History, as well as put the link in my show notes. It'll be here as well. But I actually think that this research here strengthens the message because it tells us that this isn't about one magical conversation. Instead, this is about consistency. Communication starts something, and repeated communication builds something. Communication creates trust, and trust is cumulative. And momentum is cumulative, and relationships are cumulative. So Earth Day teaches us not only about caring for the planet that we share, but also about the power of communication. When Democratic Senator Gaylord Nelson invited Republican Congressman Pete McCloskey to help lead the first Earth Day, that shared leadership created the momentum that brought 20 million people together around common goals: clean air, clean water, public health, and a better future. And it was founded in science. And their success reminds us that progress begins when people find a purpose large enough to hold disagreement. And this is Monday's Momentum. When you find yourself in disagreement with someone, perhaps the first question is not, how do I change their mind? I like that question, but it doesn't work. Instead, let's ask, what do we both care about? What is our shared denominator? Once you find common ground, the equation becomes solvable. So this Earth Day week, have one conversation, a deep, heartfelt conversation with someone whose perspectives differ from your own. The goal is not to win, but to build mutual understanding so that both people walk away feeling heard, understood, and ready to build a better future together. Thank you so much for listening to Monday's Momentum at Math Science History. And until next time, carpe diem.